This week on Motor Week, we look at our list of lemons, the cars that have disappointed us or just didn't come up to scratch. They include Richard finding fault with the 406 Coupe's interior, Ian Royal driving the Ranger and asking, why? And Ken Gibson even manages to find fault with a Bentley.
In America, they just love them. No, I'm not talking about burgers, donuts or muffins. I'm talking about pickup trucks. Why Americans have this fascination with pickup trucks, I really just can't understand, to be honest. And you don't have to be a hillbilly redneck swilling bourbon to drive one. They've now become family vehicles with large cabs, luxury accommodation, and in the case of something like the Dodge Ram, a seriously fast beast that can outdrag most sports cars. So it's interesting that Ford have decided to launch this, the new Ranger, here in the UK. Now apparently our lifestyles demand this sort of vehicle. It's going to be the next big trend. Does your lifestyle demand a pickup truck? No, and I'm not sure that mine does either. Perhaps it's more the case that Mitsubishi have the L200 introduced now in the UK and Toyota have the Hilux. But at the moment the pickup truck market here in Britain is only worth 0.13% of total vehicles sold. So in other words, the market share is tiny for this sort of vehicle, unlike this rather big beast, which is big in every way, apart from what's under the bonnet. Now you get a choice of two 2.5 litre diesel engines. The first kicks out only 78 brake horsepower and is an indirect injection diesel. This second one is better. It produces 109 brake horsepower. It's turbocharged and intercooled. It's the same 2.5 litre engine. But let's face it, neither engine is going to produce really any sort of excitement. And you can imagine both of them struggling up a fairly large hill with a full payload and a trailer on the back. So how does the Ranger cope out on the road? Well, you have to start by saying it's slow. It's unbelievably slow, in fact. I know 0 to 60 figure times don't really count for this sort of vehicle, but just to give you an example and to prove the point, I'll tell you anyway. The 60 mph sprint in this 2.5 turbo diesel takes, a snail's pace, 26 seconds. But that's nothing compared to the non-turbo diesel engine, which would take you to 60 mph in an astonishing 43 seconds. You could run faster, for goodness sake. It's amazing that in America pickup trucks have wonderful, huge engines, superb acceleration. Here, they're tinny, they're hopeless, they're slow. There are 3 versions of the Ranger: a regular cab with seating for 2 and either 2 or 4-wheel drive, a super cab with 2 extra jump seats and 2-wheel drive, and this, the 4-door double cab, the family version if you like. It seats 5, it has 4-wheel drive and the turbocharged engine, plus lots of payload space. Ride-wise in the Ranger, well, the suspension is very, very soft, which you really notice at most on country lanes on the motorway. It's fine. Steering, little light, a little vague, a lot of understeer. You go towards a corner, you start to turn, and nothing much seems to happen, so you turn and turn again until you get round. Acceleration through the gears, first and second, nothing much to talk about, but once you get into third and fourth gears, there's plenty of torque there, and it's very happy cruising on the motorway at 70 or so miles an hour, with still plenty to get you past slower traffic. Inside the cabin it's really quite spacious, certainly thanks to this high roofline. Ford claim you can also seat 5 adults in comfort in this double cab version. Now looking at those rear seats, I somehow doubt that, but anyway, that's what they claim. Specification is pretty high. The steering wheel is tilt and height adjustable. You get a radio cassette play, you get twin sun visors no less, which obviously is a big selling point on pickup trucks. Other things in this double cab version you get as well: electric windows and air conditioning, bless them. Now, although Ford claim that this is the sort of vehicle that can be used to enhance our lifestyle, I can't honestly see it, can you? If you're a builder, a tradesman, something like that, you need that payload capacity at the back absolutely fine. For the rest of us, just doesn't work for me, and certainly Mitsubishi's L200 looks better. Prices, well, they start at about £10,500 for the caffeine-free regular cab version, rising to about £15,000 for this caffeine-enhanced double cab version.
It is beautiful, isn't it? When Peugeot commissioned Pininfarina to design the new 406 Coupe, it must have been like lighting the touch paper on a firework, sitting back and waiting. And when the ensuing explosion arrived, they must have been delighted. It does withstand closer examination like any piece of sculpture, and these small buttresses down the rear of the window architecture hint at something special. The clean lines of the rear are continued around the sides with just a subtle swelling at the haunches, and then little else down the sides to the front of the car, where the nose is quietly confident and assertive perhaps, rather than overtly aggressive. These lines down the bonnet, well, you don't even notice them until you stare closely at the front of the car, and they define the shape of the front of the car. It's all very subtle and very elegant and results in a very beautiful car, which makes it all the more surprising that Peugeot decided to kit it out with the interior from an old Parisian taxi. The dash is more or less taken straight from the standard 406, the only real difference being these chrome bezels surrounding the dials, which is hardly the stuff of fantasy. Then underneath we have a strata of this odd, shiny, scratchy plastic, and then right underneath, on the centre console, we have a reappearance of the dreaded elephant hide plastic that's seen adorning the interior of the 206, and I don't like it at all. Mind you, it is a genuine four-seater. There's room in the back of the car for two proper grown-ups, and there's a really neat trick for getting them in and out. Forward and back, and forward and back. I'm sure I could break it eventually, but it would probably take me ages. So, is it just a pretty face? Is all of this just makeup, or is its beauty more than skin deep? Has the 406 Coupe got what it takes to cut the mustard when you hit the road? In short, yes, it has. This is the 3-litre V6 engine version, an engine that actually makes an appearance in a great many cars. There's the Atlantic Venturi, a French supercar, the Renault Espace and Laguna, to name but a few, and then of course the 406 Saloon and Coupe. Though I have to say, for whatever reason, it seems to make the least interesting noise in this car of all the other cars that it's fitted to. That said, it is a stonker of an engine. There's bags of torque, and once you get it fully on song, it does start to make a reasonably attractive snarl as you progress at speed. Otherwise, the chassis feels fluid and compliant and is a pleasant drive whilst being sporty at the same time. You are aware of that long wheelbase. It's quite a nice car to progress swiftly rather than perhaps cane it around the very tightest of roads. The steering is precise, though I don't like the angle of the steering wheel. It's tilted too far this way. It feels rather like driving a truck at times, and that can't be adjusted out. And the gear lever seems to have the longest throw imaginable. You need arms about 6 foot long. That said, once you engage the gear, it does snick in quite nicely for you. Peugeot are very good at building drivers' cars. They've proven it time and time again. And it's just as well that the 406 is no exception, given the car's sporting looks. But I'd like to introduce an annoying pseudo-philosophical argument here. The 406 Coupe is a beautiful car. It's also a mainstream car, and beauty is seldom mainstream. Some of the cars acknowledged to be the most beautiful in the world, well, part of their appeal is due to their rarity and exclusivity. Now, the 406 Coupe might be the kind of car that sends the fleet manager disappearing to the toilet with a picture of it, but it can hardly claim to be any sort of piece of automotive exotica. That's what's led it to become almost invisible on the road. When I first saw it at a motor show, I was stunned that Peugeot could produce such a beautiful car. Now, not far down the road, it's become just another company car, precisely because Peugeot make it. I'm sure there's a conclusion to be drawn from that. Damned if I know what it is, though. Its beauty is more than skin deep. The handling is exploitable without being challenging. The engine's strong and the face, well, gorgeous. Price-wise, at between 20 and 27 grand, it does sit rather awkwardly between more cheap and ordinary coupes and the likes of the Volvo C70, the BMW 3 Series Coupe, Saab 9-3, Mercedes CLK, and of course the Ford Kuga. And it is always going to be let down and hampered by its miserable interior and by its almost impossible good looks that render it pretty much invisible in a crowd, in much the same way that some supermodels complain that no one ever has the nerve to chat them up in bars.
Still to come after the break, more of the worst cars of the year.
There's nothing like a good day out at the beach. But how do you get here when you've got mum and dad, 3 kids, beach towels, buckets and spades, suntan lotion, a picnic, and of course, some umbrellas? Well, you could make the journey in Mazda's new Premacy. There's plenty of room in there for all the family. And if you fork out on a ferry ticket, it's a much cheaper way of letting the family experience some Viva España than if you had to buy 5 seats on a plane. The Premacy sells itself on its spaciousness and also on its user-friendly interior. It can transport loads up to 2.6 metres long, and the seats can be arranged in over 100 different positions. Now, quite why you'd want to do that, I suppose, is another matter, but still it'll give the kids a new game to play on that long drive to Spain. Oh yes, there are plenty of seat settings. The front passenger seat and central rear seat fold flat to form tabletops. All 3 independent rear seats can be single, double folded or completely removed. And there's also the option of an extremely spacious 2 seats for passengers in the back once the centre seat is removed. We just don't have time in this programme to show you all the other variations the Premacy claims to have. We can tell you, however, that these seats are very light and they fit in and out of the car with no problems. Now, while Mazda may have been very imaginative with the seating arrangements inside the cabin, it's about as dull as they come. Sensible, yes. Attractive, no. Well, not unless you've got a liking for lots and lots of grey plastic. When a car manufacturer is going to realise that we've all gone very stylish and minimalist and do all our shopping in large Swedish superstores? Still, on the positive side, there's plenty of equipment, it feels very solid and everything is well laid out. Now, most of us know that cars like this, although they're very practical, they are sadly lacking in any kind of driving excitement. I mean, you wouldn't exactly relish getting behind the wheel of one, would you? And the Premacy is no exception. It's a pretty rotten drive. Around town, it feels really quite cumbersome. This 1.8 engine just doesn't have the power that you need to zip in and out of traffic. It isn't responsive enough, and I can't even say that it's small enough to make it easy to park. And when you get it out on the open road on the motorway, things aren't any better. It feels a very, very fidgety ride. The suspension is far too soft, the steering is very light, and you find yourself correcting a lot of oversteer. And matters aren't helped any by this automatic gearbox. It revs far too high and it makes you feel as if you're behind the wheel of an extremely large lawnmower. I think if you're going to go for the Premacy, a far better option would be to go for the manual. The seating position does suit me, but if you try and get the seat back to its furthest position, anybody with long legs is really going to struggle in here, although they do, of course, have plenty of headroom, which is a good thing. The other problem is that the adjustments to move the seat around are hidden down the side down here, and it's really hard to get your hand down to it. Things aren't looking too good so far, are they really? Price depends very much on specification. The standard GXI starts at £14,700 on the road. The top-of-the-range GSI is priced at £16,850 for the manual and just over 17.5 grand for the automatic. On a more positive note though, the cabin is a nice place to be. It's very light and airy in here, and I've got to tell you, it's also a healthy place to be. That's because this is the first car in the world to be fitted with a special air filter. It gets rid of all the nasties in polluted air, as well as cigarette smoke. Well, it may not be such a nice drive, but at least it'll keep those nasty pollutants at bay. You know, it's a worrying thought. It's probably healthier in there than it is out here. Like it or not, the Premacy is smaller than your average MPV. Now, this suggests that its title as a mini MPV is that bit more logical. In fact, the Premacy is the same width and only a tiny bit longer than Mazda's 626 Estate, which was recently featured on the programme. Overall, the look of the Premacy holds its own reasonably well. It's emphasised by the shapely headlights at the front, directing attention to the 5-point grille, a theme that's carried over to the rear window, providing you with good driving visibility. Mazda have attempted to add a slightly sporty look to this Premacy GSI. These alloy wheels come as standard, along with the rear boot spoiler. It does, however, seem a pity that some of this creative flair failed to make it under the bonnet. Although Mazda's new edition, the Premacy, is a mini MPV, in fact they're planning to build a 7-seater larger MPV which will be based on it. Both of these cars will join a market that's just flooded with vehicles like this, and it's expecting new arrivals in the shape of the Vauxhall Concept A and Ford's Focus MAV. So do we really need another one?
It's most definitely a mini MPV, but the whole purpose of it is it can be used for anything. It's more important now today than ever that people have a quality lifestyle. So therefore you can use it for work, and it's compact, easy to park and drive. It's also very user-friendly for weekends and leisure purposes. So it fits quite neatly in the marketplace as a mini MPV.
So would I buy one? Well, I've got to admit that I think it looks pretty good, and there is plenty of space inside, which makes it a good practical buy. But I'm afraid there aren't enough thrills in the driving department for me. And besides, I'm not in the market for sensible yet. I'm missing one vital ingredient. I don't have 2.4 kids.
Now, arriving at 5-star luxury hotels is all about arriving in style. You might think that a helicopter pad in a helicopter could be the perfect way. I don't think so. If you give me the chance, I reckon I'd make a bigger impression turning up at the doors in my Bentley. £255,000. That's what it would cost you to buy this Bentley Sedanca Coupe. But this is a Bentley with a none too subtle difference. Bentley say they wanted to make the ultimate statement when they made this car, and that's why we've got this hideous burnt orange metallic colour. 50% of these cars are going to go to the Sunshine States of America, and you've guessed it, the old Yanks demand something very, very extrovert. But personally, I think the original Bentley boys will be turning in their grave. So what's it like driving a mobile fortune? First impression is of absolute comfort. It's like sitting on a large throne. It also feels frighteningly powerful. That's probably because it's got a 6.7 litre monster engine with 400 brake horsepower that will propel this 2.5 tons worth of metal from 0 to 60 in a frightening 6.1 seconds. Should you be allowed, it would also take you rapidly to 155 miles an hour. I was really apprehensive before I got in. I mean, 250,000, that's £250,000. To be honest, I was more than apprehensive, I was bloody scared. I mean, what if somebody bumps into you? But the fact is, everybody is paying homage to you. There's no navigation system. I mean, you even get one of those in a Vauxhall Vectra. That's optional in the Bentley, though. And I wouldn't have minded having a TV screen. You get one of those in a BMW 5 Series. Well, there's a herd of cows being sacrificed for the leather for this, and by God, though, it was worth it, because comfort-wise, I am just sitting in seventh heaven here. It is so relaxing. The only danger is you can imagine yourself nodding off. And as for the back, well, to be quite frank, there is no room at all, or very little. This is definitely not the Bentley you want to be chauffeured in. This is a driver's car, and this is the place you want to be. You don't feel too cramped, though, because you've got the ultimate sunroof. 2 removable panels, second sunroof for the people sitting in the back, and this Bentley converts at the touch of a button into a soft-top sports car. Incredible thing about Bentley owners is apparently the average one owns between 6 and 10 cars, including at least 2 supercars like a Ferrari and a Porsche 911. It's a hard life being a Bentley owner. Behind all the typically traditional Bentley wood and all the rest of it though, this Bentley is an absolute aristocratic hooligan. Not surprisingly, you don't see too many Bentley owners doing the shopping, using them for the day-to-day things. So, anyway, here we are. Let's just park up. No wonder they don't like parking Bentleys at supermarkets. I've just found out why. At nearly 18 foot, they're a nightmare. You do realise, of course, that the Bentley badge is now actually no longer a Bentley, because, of course, it's owned by Volkswagen. Good news is that they intend, they say, keeping the badge and everything else about the car just so. What it'll mean, though, is they're going to invest £500 million of their money on a new model range of Bentleys. So that's it. I've had my amazing day as king of the road, but let's get back to reality. This car is still £255,000. For that, you could buy 6 people's homes here. So, do I want to be Mr. Sensible? I don't think so. What I really want is to keep my motoring fantasy.
Coming up on next week's show, we take a look back at the best cars of the century, including Chris Goffey looking at a 100-mile-an-hour car from 1913, and Ken Gibson with the first car to get a mention in the Oxford English Dictionary. All that next week on Motor Week.